Good morning. Welcome to Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress, and I'll be your host for the next hour. Thanks for tuning in this morning. I want to ask to my listeners a question. Can Catholics be trusted to serve in our government? Might seem a strange question in a land where religious liberty is honored and respected and protected by the Constitution of the United States. But taking into consideration that a true Roman Catholic's first and only allegiance is to the Pope, and that his oath of allegiance to the United States of America is null and void when and if at such time the Pope declares that the government of the United States is heretical, can a Roman Catholic be trusted? Is his oath of allegiance to the United States and his intent to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, is that oath valid if he's a true Roman Catholic? Author R.W. Thompson, in his book, The Papacy and the Civil Power, beginning on page 624 at the top of the paragraph that we concluded yesterday, he says, the same question arose afterward in England at a period nearer our own times, when toward the close of the last century, the question of Catholic emancipation or Catholic freedom was pending before the British Parliament. It was doubted by many whether it would be safe to confer full political privileges upon Roman Catholics because of the doctrines of the papacy in regard to their allegiance. Strong efforts were made to remove this doubt, and as the most efficient means of doing so, the opinions of learned divines and foreign universities were solicited directly upon the question of the power of the Pope to depose monarchs and to release their subjects from allegiance, and the obligation of papists to keep faith with heretics, or rather, to not keep faith with heretics. Remember, the Third Lateran Council made it obligatory that Roman Catholics not keep faith with Protestants or heretics, anyone who differs from the Roman Catholic faith. Now, it says 3 questions embracing these points were sent to the universities of Louvain, Douai, and Paris in France, and Alcalá, Valladolid, and Salamanca in Spain. The answers were all condemnatory of the doctrine of papal infallibility, in that from Douai, taken as a specimen, it is said, quote, that no power whatsoever in civil or temporal concerns was given by the Almighty, that is, God Almighty, either to the Pope, the cardinals, or the Church herself, and consequently that kings and sovereigns are not, in temporal concerns, subject by the ordination of God to any ecclesiastical power whatsoever, neither can their subjects, by any authority granted to the Pope or the Church from above, be freed from their obedience or absolved from their oath of allegiance, unquote. So, the Pope loses in all counts, okay? And, of course, if the Roman Catholics in England believed this, then there would be no bar, no natural barrier from them to take legitimate roles in the English Parliament, okay? And it says, and they declared that they were bound to keep all oaths, whether pledged to Catholic, heretic, or infidel. Okay? Roman Catholics, according to these experts in France and Spain, all agree that their oaths are to be kept. Catholics are to keep their oaths. And it says these doctrines were also asserted in 1792 by a Roman Catholic committee in Ireland, acting for and in the name of all their countrymen of that faith, Roman Catholicism. And when long afterward, in 1826, the three Irish bishops, Murray, Doyle, and Kelly, were examined before the British House of Commons on this same subject, they also unanimously affirmed the doctrines set forth by the universities. Now, if the question then to be decided had been whether or not the popes themselves had claimed and asserted their own infallibility, these inquiries would have been entirely useless. That a very large number of them had done so directly and most explicitly is well understood. The object of the inquiry, however, was to ascertain whether or not the claim they set up was recognized by the Church as a part of the faith, whether or not their frequent repetition of the claim gave it the binding force of law to the whole Church. Like all other aspiring and ambitious rulers, they endeavored at all times, that is the popes, to extend their power and omitted no argument necessary to maintain it. Nor were they ever known to abate their pretensions. On the other hand, by including the disposing power of the spiritual, they had enlarged the limits of their jurisdiction so as to embrace the entire world. Hence it became necessary to know to what extent the faith of the Church had been influenced by these exorbitant demands, for the plain reason that if the assertion of this enormous power, frequently repeated by any number of popes, had engrafted the doctrine of papal infallibility upon the canons of the Church, so that the whole membership were bound to accept it as a necessary part of the faith, then it was undoubted that the obligation of allegiance to the Pope was higher and more binding than that to any nation on earth. Therefore, it was necessary to ascertain whether the Roman Catholics of England and Ireland adopted or repudiated this kind of faith, so that Parliament could decide advisedly whether they should or should not be allowed to share in the management of public affairs. It would be unjust, in the absence of all evidence to that effect, to say that they acted with duplicity by concealing their real belief. However this may have been, the answers were satisfactory, and the Bill of Catholic Emancipation ultimately became a law. In other words, Roman Catholics were then allowed, once again, to participate in civil affairs, in government. And it says the object they desired was accomplished. They were in like Flynn. Now the question is, how long did these Catholics who participated in Congress or in the English Parliament, how long did they keep up the pretense that they were loyal to the king and loyal to the government, and that their loyalty to the Pope did not preempt it? Anyway, history has clearly proven that you can't negotiate such things with Romanists because they lie with their fingers crossed behind their backs. And they're always brought back into papal obedience. Okay? Now, as much as you might think that the issue was solved by all the universities and all the authorities, the thinkers of France and Spain over this issue, you would think that it would have finally been put to rest. But that's not the case. Now, he continues, he says, if we are to decide upon the existence of facts not within our personal knowledge by the settled and common sense rules of evidence, it must be accepted as established beyond contradiction that at the times referred to, the Roman Catholics of the United States, France, England, and Ireland not only did not accept papal infallibility as a part of their religious faith, but positively denied it. They constituted a very large portion of the Roman Catholic world, so large a portion that it would be absolute folly to talk about the universality of any dogma of faith which was rejected by them. In France especially, notwithstanding Protestantism was tolerated, the government was Roman Catholic. And to say that it could remain so and reject so important a dogma as this would amount to the impeachment of the integrity of the Pope for not condemning it, and of the intelligence and piety of those who did so. And in Ireland, as is well known, there has been for several centuries such devotion to the true faith that no shadow of doubt has ever rested upon the loyalty of its Roman Catholic people to Rome. Shall we not accept all these people then as denying the Pope's infallibility? If they truthfully declared the doctrine of the Church on this subject, has not the dogma of the late Council prescribed a new article of faith? Now he's talking about Vatican Council I in 1870, that officially made it a dogma of the Church that the Pope is infallible. That was Pope Pius IX, declared to be infallible, and that it was retroactive, by the way, that all the popes preceding him were infallible as well, and that all the popes succeeding him are infallible as well. It's an infallible institution. Okay? Now, if they truthfully declared the doctrine of the Church on this subject, has not the dogma of the late Council prescribed a new article of faith? Manifestly, it has declared that to be the faith, let me read it correctly. Manifestly, it has declared that to be the faith which before its passage was not the faith. In other words, before the First Vatican Council, it was not the faith of the Roman Catholic Church that the Pope was infallible. But after the Council of 1870, the First Vatican Council, it was a part of the faith. It was made official dogma of the Church. That means that it's held as binding of all Catholics. You must not dissent from a decision of an ecumenical council. To do so is to be ipso facto excommunicated. Now, he says, then it was not heresy to deny papal infallibility. Now it is. Then a Roman Catholic could believe it or not, as seemed fit to him. Now he is anathematized if he does not believe it. It has changed his relations to the Church and to the country in which he resides. See what's happened here? If it was ever accepted as truth in England that a Roman Catholic could be safely trusted and entrusted with offices in government in a Protestant nation being secured that Roman Catholic did not hold his first and foremost allegiance to the Pope of Rome, what happened to that allegiance after 1870, when the Pope was declared infallible? Does not that now change the Roman Catholic faith? Does that not now bind every Roman Catholic on accepting papal infallibility? And if infallible, if that Pope should decree the government of England heretical, which it certainly does, being Protestant, then can a Catholic in England be trusted to serve in government? The author's telling us we have to ask this same question of Catholics in the government of the United States today, long after the decree of papal infallibility, long after it was made a dogma of the Church. Can we really trust Roman Catholics to be responsible members of Congress, preserving, protecting, and defending the Constitution of the United States? Or is their oath null and void now that the Pope is infallible? Can they take that oath knowing that they're swearing falsely in order to gain the position in government necessary to destroy the Constitution of the United States and to put in its place the decrees of the Pope, Roman Catholic canon law, his bulls and briefs and encyclicals? I request that my listeners, if you've taken this subject seriously, read the book Ecclesiastical Megalomania. Ecclesiastical Megalomania. It's available today. It's a very recently published book. And it tells you, it shows you, count by count, how the government of the United States is adopting and implementing Roman Catholic canon law in economics. It's a very, very important book. And I hope my listeners, it's not an easy read, but if you want to see the language of the encyclicals and briefs of popes and what they imply, and then show side by side the legislation that was passed commensurate with the decrees of the popes, you can only come to one conclusion: that the Roman Catholics in our government have sworn falsely, that they have no allegiance to our country, that they have no obligation to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, but that they are exercising their offices, their authority, to create and to pass legislation that is a mirror image of Roman Catholic canon law. You can't deny it once you read the book. Ecclesiastical Megalomania by Robbins, Dr. John Robbins, John W. Robbins. Ecclesiastical Megalomania by Dr. John W. Robbins. Very, very revealing book. It confirms here what R.W. Thompson is trying to tell us. The warning, the implicit warning in what R.W. Thompson is telling us right here in this chapter. All right, he continues. It has changed the Roman Catholic person's relations to the church and to the country in which he resides. In other words, the doctrinal decree, the dogma of papal infallibility instantly changed the relationship between every Roman Catholic and the government under which he serves and the nation within which he lives. That act alone transformed Roman Catholics from citizens of the nation to a potential fifth column for the overthrow of every nation. I hope my listeners can comprehend what I'm saying. Now, R.W. Thompson continues. He says, it super adds to his obligation of allegiance to his country the obligation to a higher allegiance to the Pope. And naturally, you must understand that if it's now become a dogma of the faith that the Pope is infallible, it just goes without saying that their first allegiance must be to the Pope. Infallibility certainly trumps any government on the earth. I mean, rationalizing, as a Roman Catholic naturally would, being now bound, whether he believes it or not, deep within his heart, he must assent to it, that the Pope is infallible. When he speaks ex cathedra, that is, through bulls, encyclicals, and briefs. If he's infallible in any aspect of his being, then every Roman Catholic is obliged to assent to him and dissent to the government. Now, it subordinates his national citizenship to his citizenship of a great ecclesiastical empire. The Holy Roman Empire, right? It changes the Orthodox faith into heresy. It takes away the right of the individual opinion upon the very question involved and denies any further exercise of reason. In other words, you can't question it. This decree, this council, this conciliar decree of papal infallibility cannot be questioned by a Roman Catholic if he's serious about remaining a Roman Catholic, and carrying along with it all the consequences which the popes have claimed as involved in their infallibility. It requires the Church to accept for the first time as an absolutely necessary part of the faith the equality of the Pope with God in the government of all human affairs within the extensive domain of faith and morals. Is not all this new? We've already agreed, we may readily agree, that it is not so to the popes who, like other ambitious men, are ever ready to assert doctrines designed to increase and consolidate their power. That is not the question any more than it is now a question to decide whether kings, by the persistent assertion of the divine right to govern, have established a principle of law by which all mankind are to be now and forever held in subjection to them. The question is whether it is not new as a doctrine of the Church. How can it be otherwise when the universal Church never assented to it, when no council ever declared it as it is now declared, and when at least one ecumenical council was expressly asserted precisely the reverse? The claim is not new, for the popes and the Jesuits have repeatedly asserted it, but the doctrine is, and it is only as doctrine that it becomes a part of the faith of the Roman Catholic Church. If then it is faith for the first time, it is new faith, necessarily. But is it faith for the first time? The Catechism of the Church answers this. The Catechism of the Roman Catholic Church answers this question. Previous to the late Lateran Council of 1870, Pope Pius IX, the declaration of papal infallibility, previous to that council, there was an authorized version of the Roman Catholic Catechism circulated in England, which had the sanction of the highest authorities of the Roman Catholic Church, including Dr. Manning, the great Archbishop of Westminster, wherein the following question and answer are found. Listen to this. Question. Are not Catholics bound to believe the Pope in himself to be infallible? Answer. This is a Protestant invention and is no article of the Catholic faith. So we see, even in the Roman Catholic Catechism, that at one time at least, it was not an article of the Roman Catholic faith to believe that the Pope was infallible. Now it is. So is it not a new faith entirely? And how does that new faith change the obligation of Roman Catholics serving in government? Prior to 1870, at the First Vatican Council, before the decree, the papal decree of papal infallibility, before the Pope declared himself infallible, officially, in a council, it was believed by some and disbelieved by others. It was obeyed by some and disobeyed by others. It was a matter of great controversy. It was a war that was constantly waged between popes and councils, between popes and kings. But the Jesuits had to once and for all settle the issue. And that's what they did in 1870. Now you could no longer argue with the dogma of papal infallibility. All of a sudden, it was official. The Pope is, as it were, God on earth. In 1870. Became an official dogma of the faith. You can't be Catholic if you don't believe in the infallibility of the Pope. So you have to ask yourself the logical question. How does this new dogma change the relationship between Roman Catholics and the governments and the nations under which they live? If there was ever a question as to loyalty or primacy or supremacy of their loyalty, whether it be to the state or whether it be to the Pope, there's no question about it now. They must surrender their loyalty, their allegiance to the Pope. And if and when the Pope should see fit to declare a government heretical, as he has done all republics on the earth, including and especially this Protestant constitutional republic, can Catholics be trusted to serve in government? Can they be trusted to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States? Or would you just assume, as one might rightly assume, that their first allegiance now is to the Pope, and if he says you make Roman Catholic canon law of the land, and you overturn that Constitution, then don't we have every right, in spite of the constitutional guarantee of religious liberty, don't we have the logical right to question the loyalty now of Catholics in government? England had to deal with this question, and they did. And it took a whole lot of convincing to make those Brits acquiesce to allowing Catholics to serve in the government. It took all the universities of France and Spain and the governments of those nations to say, no, the Pope doesn't have any authority over the king. He can't depose kings of their kingdoms. He can't cause a rebellion between the people and the kings to overthrow governments. He can't call crusades. And England, ill-advisedly, allowed Catholics back in the government. And we've never asked the question, can Catholics be trusted in government? Or at least if we ever did, it was back in the colonial period where it was originally decided, no Catholics in the government. History's proven they can't be trusted. Their first allegiance is to God, and their God is the Pope. But then came the Revolutionary War, where the Catholics and the Protestants had to fight side by side to gain independence from England, and now all of a sudden they're friendly with one another, Catholics and Protestants. So we've grown up friendly since the Revolutionary War. But what happened in 1870 to the Catholics that we were once friendly with, that we bled with side by side during the Revolutionary War, and for that matter, the Civil War? What has happened to our relationship with Catholics since the dogma of papal infallibility was officially decreed at Vatican Council I in 1870? Has the relationship changed? All you have to do is read the book Ecclesiastical Megalomania by Dr. John W. Robbins. Ecclesiastical Megalomania by Dr. John W. Robbins, and you will see beyond any shadow of doubt that the legislation passed by Roman Catholics in our government today are Roman Catholic canon law. They run directly, diametrically opposed to the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. They're overthrowing the government. They're doing it right in front of our faces, and they make no apology, and they certainly don't admit that they're serving the Pope instead of preserving, protecting, and defending the Constitution, which they swore to do. And we've got historical precedents, much historical precedents of popes absolving Roman Catholics of their oath of allegiance to their nations and their kings and their governments and their constitutions for the very purpose of overthrow. That's the whole history of England. That literally defines the history of England. And we were all duped to believe that, oh, that was just ancient history. Hell, it ain't that way anymore. We're civilized now. The papacy isn't what it used to be. He's just a doddering old fool. Nobody pays much attention to him. Trust me, when you read the book Ecclesiastical Megalomania by Dr. John W. Robbins, you come to a completely different conclusion, and it's in black and white. It's in your face. It's undeniable, and we've got to deal with it. Can Roman Catholics be trusted in our government? If they can't, I assert that all the laws of this country need to be reviewed item by item, and every item in the laws passed in this country ever since 1870 and before that is consistent with Roman Catholic canon law should have a black line written right through it. Strike it. Just strike a line right through it. It's ipso facto, to use Rome's terms, null and void. Okay? Let's try a little bit of Pope speak on the Pope himself. Just veto the thing. By unanimous consent. Whack. Just strike a line through it. And we'll just point the finger at every Roman Catholic in this country. If you insist on staying a Roman Catholic, you keep it to yourself and not in our government. We're going to learn the lesson from history. We're going to learn the lesson from England. You can't trust Rome, and you can't trust Roman Catholics in government. And they ought to all be impeached. And many of them should be tried for treason and dealt with accordingly. But is that what's going to happen in this country? My assertion is, at least from my own experience, what I see with my eyes is, nobody's going to rise up against this Roman horde. We want to ecumenically reunite with the Roman Catholic Church. We want to consolidate all the power of quote-unquote Christianity into the Roman Catholic Church. That the Roman Catholic Church is going to speak for Christianity. And that we must do so in order to stave off this so-called threat of Islam, Islamic terror. We have to protect the world from Sharia law, never comprehending the danger of coming under Roman Catholic canon law, which when compared to Sharia law, well, look, there's been no time in history where blood was ever more shed than when Roman Catholic canon law was the law of the land. Now, make what you will of Sharia law, but you got to conclude it doesn't hold a candle to Roman Catholic canon law when it comes to killing. Doesn't hold a candle. R.W. Thompson asks a very, very legitimate question. He asked it back in 1876. Of course, nobody wants to answer that question because you'd be accused of anti-Catholic bigotry. Well, I'm not so politically correct anymore that I would fear being accused of being an anti-Roman Catholic bigot. But you know what? I'm not anti-Catholic. I'm anti-Catholicism. I've heeded the warnings of R.W. Thompson and so many of the other authors that we've read here on Inquisition Update. Recognizing that I, at one time in my life, was just as deceived as everyone else, believing that the Antichrist wouldn't come until the last 7 years of history and that it wouldn't matter anyway because I was going to be raptured out of here. I was deceived. Now I'm not deceived, at least not on this count, that the Antichrist has been in the world for at least 1,500 years and is in the world today and will continue in the world until Christ comes and destroys it. That's the papacy and the governments of the world that he controls. That Roman Catholics, I understand that Roman Catholics were the first Protestant reformers. It was Roman Catholics who, having once read the Scriptures for themselves in a language that they could understand, recognized, admitted that it was their church described in the Bible as that whore that rode the scarlet-colored beast of Revelation chapter 17. It was Roman Catholics who saw the light and let their feet do the talking. And they walked out of the Roman Catholic Church. And they staked their claim on Christ and the Scriptures. And they brought liberty to all of Europe. Might they do it again here in Protestant America? They want to classify me as an anti-Roman Catholic bigot. You don't want to know the truth? My hope lies in the Roman Catholics of this country to do again what they did before at the Protestant Reformation. So, if my hope lies in Roman Catholics to read the Scriptures, believe what the Scriptures say and deny what the Roman Catholic Church tradition teaches, that they are the only hope for America to overthrow the power of the Pope in our government today. It has to be an uprising among Roman Catholics. And why do I hold hope in the Catholics? Because the Protestants show no, I'm telling you, the effort that I've expended on amateur radio and on Inquisition Update in the last 10 years would exhaust you just to read it. Day and night, day and night. Many nights I don't even sleep. Studying the history of the Roman Catholic Church and what influence it has in our government today. The effort that I've expended on Inquisition Update and on amateur radio to educate people about this stuff is just, well, I can't believe it myself. But Protestants don't want to hear it. They spend all their time, whether they call themselves Protestants or not, certainly not Catholics. The Protestants, I'll just use the term Protestants since they're not Roman Catholics. I've called them before ecumenical evangelibellies. That sticks. Okay, that's not just a pejorative. They're drunk with the wine of Vatican Council II. They are ecumenical evangelibellies. They're maniacs. They want to go back to the Roman Catholic Church. They want Christianity to be united when Christ simply said plainly that he came not to unite but to divide. But they're not going to go by Christ. They're going to go by the Pope. And they believe a popish fiction that Antichrist doesn't come till the last 7 years of time. How convenient for the papacy. What a convenient way to overturn the entire Protestant Reformation. Just say, no, it isn't the Pope. It wasn't the Pope. It isn't the Pope. And it won't be the Pope. No, it'll be some slick-looking dude like you see in the Left Behind series of videos. He won't come to the last, he'll be an American probably. And he won't come to the last 7 years. Besides, you'll be raptured out of here. You don't have to worry about Antichrist. You need to reunite with the Roman Catholic Church. We are the one holy Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church, aren't we? Sure. So if you want to be saved, you have to join us, and you have to obey our laws. Roman Catholic canon law. And if you don't, we're going to burn you at the stake, lop off your head, deny you health care, deny you defense, deny you an attorney. We're going to make a nice bed of nails for you in a concentration camp somewhere until you either recant and join us or die. Is that the body of Christ? Is that truly a Christian religion? You better believe we better be considering what effect Roman Catholics have in our government. Again, I'm going to recommend the book by title, Ecclesiastical Megalomania, by Dr. John W. Robbins. Get a copy of the book and read it. And I won't have to assert it anymore. I would like to read that book on Inquisition Update. But it's pretty heavy reading, and I think I'd lose a great number of my listeners because it is pretty stiff reading. But it should be bought and it should be read by my listeners to confirm the assertions that we make here on Inquisition Update and First Amendment Radio. We're losing our country not because of a whole series of unfortunate events that have taken place concerted to bring down the country. No, it's all planned. It's all documented in papal encyclicals and bulls and briefs. The Pope is the one bringing down this country, turning the country into chaos, making the country ungovernable so that out of the chaos can come a new order, a new world order of the Pope. The new world order is simply the old world order restored. And I want my listeners to know that that new world order could not take place. The old world order could not be restored were Protestantism still alive. Protestantism was built on a foundation of this, that the papacy is, was, and always will be the historical, biblical, and prophetic Antichrist. Only the Roman Catholic Church, only the papacy fulfills all the prophecies of the Bible regarding Antichrist and the beast that carrieth her. You cannot be Protestant unless you know in your heart and tell others who the Antichrist is. You want to know how to identify a Protestant when you meet one on the street? Hi, Mr. Protestant, I'm a Protestant too. You simply ask them the question. Who's the Antichrist? And if he even stutters, walk away. He doesn't know. He's not a Protestant. He can't be a Protestant. Now, he can call himself a Protestant till hell freezes over, but he's not a Protestant. He may not even be a Christian. He could be an ecumenical evangelibelly who wants to war against the Protestant Reformation and cover up what they believed with a lie. That the Pope doesn't come, or that the Antichrist doesn't come till the last 7 years of time. And you don't have to worry about him anyway, because you're going to be raptured out of here. You talk about pie in the sky, straight from Jesuitism, straight from Francisco Ribera and Alcazar, and all the other Jesuit manipulations of Scripture to defeat Protestantism. The only thing they had to do to defeat Protestantism was to shed doubt about who Antichrist was, and they've done a magnificent job. A magnificent job. Such a magnificent job that even common sense and the Scriptures isn't enough to overturn the lie. It has to be through direct and divine revelation from the Scriptures. So I don't see ecumenical evangelibellies as a hope at all. They show no sign of turning. Stiff-necked, rebellious, self-righteous people who have bought and sold the lie for nearly 100 years now. A little over 100 years, as a matter of fact. But most particularly since Vatican Council II. They can't be counted on. It's going to have to come from Catholics, once again. Those who are so steeped in error that any glimmer of light gets their attention. And it was but 500 years ago that the light began to shine upon a few very, very blessed Roman Catholics. And they admitted the most difficult reality, that their Pope and their church together were that prophesied in the Bible, the Antichrist, and they came out. And it is my hope and prayer that Catholics listening to this program won't see me as an enemy, but as their best friend. I'm not an anti-Roman Catholic bigot. If I were, I wouldn't be here to tell the truth to them. Take a look at the Scriptures once again. See how the Spirit moves you. Let history and the Bible be your guide. Let the Holy Spirit minister the truth to your heart. I'll see you tomorrow on Inquisition Update.